The November NATS chat. I'm Kari Ragan, the moderator of NATS chats, and we're so pleased that you're here tonight. I want to begin first by thanking Inside View Press for their ongoing sponsorship of our webinars. And tonight we have these wonderful guests that are cantors. Sharon, I'm so thrilled that you reached out to me to initiate a really important topic. I have had a couple students, so I have helped her with this, or them with this music, and so I'm thrilled to be able to learn more to even contribute further to the specialized singing that we're going to discuss tonight. Let me begin by having each of you briefly introduce yourself. Sharon, why don't you begin?
Well, I was trained as an opera singer and then decided to have a family. So I taught choral music for 35 years, but I also taught privately and I direct community choir. And I've had, in the area I live in, there's a lot of part-time cantors where they just get hired for the Jewish holidays. And so I'll be helping them with the prayers and the coloratura and the technique. And I grew up with Jewish music. My Hebrew school music teacher was Albert Weiser. He was a musicologist. And I also studied with Masha Benya, who came over from Europe and brought a lot of Yiddish song and Ladino song and Hebrew art song. So I've had some Jewish training, and my husband was a cantor. So, yeah, it's
wonderful.
Been a part of my life. He's not getting over cold.
Well, we're glad you're well and here. Josh, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Delighted to be with you. I'm Cantor Josh Breitzer. I use he, him pronouns, and for going on 15 years, I've been the cantor and music director at Congregation Beth Elohim in Park Slope, Brooklyn, which is a large Reform synagogue. I also am clinical instructor of cantorial arts at Hebrew Union College, where I was ordained as a cantor in 2011. And as of this past July 2025, I'm the president of the American Conference of Cantors, which is the Reform Jewish Movement's professional organization serving cantors and supporting them in all of their sacred work. So really honored and delighted to be here with all of you.
Lovely. Thank you. You gave us a lot of history in that. I mean, the organizational construct of some of this, I'm sure, is really important. Thank you. And Cindy, would you like to?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Cantor Sydney Michaeli, she, her. I currently serve a congregation in the DMV area, Northern Virginia, a large Reformed congregation. I've been out in the field for, this is my third year. So I'm probably the closest of all of us to still being back in cantorial school. If anyone has, questions surrounding that, it's a really wonderful program, 5 years of intensive study through the Reform movement in Jerusalem and New York City. Prior to going to cantorial school, I studied classical vocal performance at the Hart School, and I'm just so thrilled to be here with all my colleagues and excited to share anything I can to help all of you understand more about what it is to work with cantors.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sydney. And Benjamin, I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Correct. So good evening, everyone. Some of you I know also, so good evening to Cantor Leifer, Cantor Shoshani, and as well as to the other two distinguished cantors. I'm not so long as the others in this field. I'm 36 years in this field. I start at the age of 19. I was taught by one of the golden age cantors, Cantor 𝗖ście 𝗛𝗁𝘁𝘀𝘁, and I did voice training for 9.5 years in 3 different continents. Start in Israel, then I was been appointed. My first position was in what used to be East Berlin, just after the wall came down, in a synagogue that's called Adat Israel. Whatever left from that after 80 years that was established. And My next stop was in Johannesburg, South Africa, and I was there for 3 years prior coming to this wonderful country. And I assumed the position of the cantor in Congregation Sons of Israel, which was actually my home for more than 15 years. At about 2010, I moved back to Israel, and I was performing concerts in Europe, a few of them in Europe and in Israel. I also served during my time in the army from 1988 to 91. I served as a cantor of the Burial Society of the Central Command, and as I mentioned before, for a good 15 years, I was the cantor in Congregation Sons of Israel in Woodmere, New York. And I assumed my position as the cantor of Sons of Israel again on April. I came back on April 1st, 2025. So that's in a nutshell.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Ethan.
Hi, everyone. You can hear me. Cantor Ethan Leifer. I am the cantor currently at Temple Beth El in Cedarhurst on Long Island, one of the 5 towns right next door to Benny there, who's in Woodmere. I also started relatively young, got hired at Beth El when I was 21 years old, and I was there for 5 years. And then off to Merrick, Long Island for 8 years, and now have been back at Beth El since 2014. So technically starting my 18th year at Beth El, a little divided, 8 years in Merrick. So been doing this a little while, all at 2 shuls, so been blessed to not have to move around too much. And I guess my singing career started just before that. You know, I put out I guess a Jewish pop album of Hasidic original music, was touring the world doing concerts, concertizing, things like that. And I guess I'm more in the later styles of the cantor, of one who's kind of adapts. Been doing, you know, a lot of Broadway stuff in my services, and Beatles and Elvis and all sorts of American stuff in my services, and adapting more of that. But certainly when the traditional, more of the traditional pieces are required, certainly capable and willing to do that as well. So I'm looking forward to learning from everybody here tonight, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ethan. And Joseph.
Oh, hello, everybody. I was the cantor in Eldridge Street Synagogue for about 10 years. And then I did a couple of years in Binyamin's synagogue. I was there for about 2 years. And now I'm in Baltimore. I reside in Baltimore, and I'm not currently serving a position in any congregation. So I'm sort of a roving cantor, if you will. Not a raving one, but you know, I go around and I try to insert myself and talk to a guy that likes to put, because generally I go to Orthodox synagogues and they don't generally have cantors anymore. So like someone will come over to me and they'll be like, "You want to daven?" And I'll be like, all right, and try to look casual about it. But that's what I've been doing lately.
Wonderful. Thank you. Before we take a deep dive, because I have no real idea with the people that registered their level of knowledge. They might be at a level of knowledge like me, which is very minimal, or they may already be cantors themselves or exploring it. But can someone just briefly talk about, Sydney, I think you mentioned 5 years, or was that Josh? Can someone just tell me, and is it quite competitive, and do most people have a vocal performance degree before they do this? Can someone just give me a big, yeah, Josh?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. As I think many people know, Judaism, like Christianity, at least in North America, is divided into different denominations. You heard earlier the phrase Orthodox, which generally describes those who are practicing the most traditional form of Judaism and most sort of strictly interpreting the rules as laid out in the Torah and in the Old Testament. There's conservative Judaism, and then there's Reform Judaism. So there's a whole spectrum of practice and observance. And the role of the cantor in each of those denominations also is different. I can speak with most authority about the Reform movement, which is the movement that I grew up in and that I currently serve. In Reform Judaism, the cantor is an ordained member of the clergy, same as a rabbi. The principal difference is the cantor uses music to inspire and to lead and to engage communities in their Jewish identity. And the term cantor in at least the Reform movement generally implies someone who has been ordained as a cantor. And yes, there is a 5-year course of study associated with that. But I'm eager to hear from my colleagues sort of how cantor is defined in more traditional communities.
So if I may ask, Eden, you want to start? Go ahead.
No, please, after you.
So I can speak for myself. I was born and raised in an Orthodox environment, and to this day I consider myself as an Orthodox man, although I serve a very traditional conservative synagogue, which means we are following, when in the service itself, we following the Orthodox prayer book, and we do not have what they call egalitarian services, which mean we count just men for the 10 people that has to conform the minyan or the quorum that needs to be prayed to have services, and also we don't have like mixed choirs. We don't have a choir period, but we couldn't have, according to the chart that we have, a mixed choir. The way that I was trained very intensively, but privately, with, as I mentioned, with cantor 𝗖ście 𝗛𝘁𝘀𝘁𝘀, which was he was reside in Israel, and for 4 years I was trained by him. I was if it's starting with the nusach, which is the formula of each service, if it's the Friday night or a Saturday morning or the high holidays or the other holidays. And when I was serving as a cantor in South Africa, the cantor is like the showman for Friday night and Saturday morning and holidays. So this is how you are looked at, and people are very knowledgeable when it comes to cantorial pieces and cantorial music in South Africa. And their expectation was on Friday night, especially on Friday night services, their expectation was that you would come every Friday with some new piece, but a piece that they know. They were very traditional, as opposing to New York. Here there was more room to play with the cantorial music, with the Ashkenazic music, as Cantor Leifer mentioned before. You could also spice it up a little bit with contemporary music, with musicals, with opera, and so on and so forth.
Thank you.
I have along Cantor Shechter's line, I have a similar upbringing, and I think, just for the record, Cantor Josh, I think the IRS considers you a cantor and part of the clergy once you do it full time for 5 years. So I guess as far as that goes, once you do it full time for 5 years, the IRS considers you a cantor. But I had a similar background. I grew up modern Orthodox, going to day school. So from 3rd grade, going to attend Shabbat services every week in my Orthodox shul, I was already learning the trup and reading Torah and learning how to daven, in junior congregation, they called it. So I guess I had the background. I didn't go to cantorial school. I didn't need to go to cantorial school because I already, was familiar, fluent in Hebrew and fluent in Hebrew reading, and knew all the nusach already I was leading services in the junior congregation from 4th and 5th grade, and then once I was bar mitzvah after that. So similarly, I was also trained privately with someone maybe some of you have heard of, with Dudu Fisher, is a very close friend of mine. And so he taught me about some chazanut and some of the more traditional parts of it to incorporate. So, I was able to get the jobs I got without, being a member of the Cantors Assembly or anything like that. But now I do serve an egalitarian conservative shul. Wasn't always egalitarian. It used to be much more traditional. But I guess similarly to Benny, it was more of a private education than a formal program.
Interesting. Well, thank you. We've got a lot to cover. So let me, Sharon, I'm going to lead with you, though. I want to ask, since you reached out to me as I was putting together this year's NATS chat season, and I was thrilled to include this topic. And so I wanted to know, what made you reach out to NATS, a NATS organization? Like, what is it that you want the NATS teachers to know?
Well, I think I wrote things down for you. So I feel that cantorial music has a unique set of vocal skills and stylistic sense and a connection to rarely explored legacy of historical musical traditions than I see on these chats. So it's an art. Most of the cantors have operatic voices, which we'll see a bit later in the golden age of cantorial music. One of the cantors sang from 𝗖𝘂𝗲𝘀𝘀. So, and in addition, the depth of expression, the ornate embellishments, the breath control, the stamina to last for 4 days of prayers, singing, coloratura passages, beautiful legato and pianissimi. I think it can also provide for vocal training beyond the Jewish realm.
I love that. Thank you. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you a little bit with, if you'd like to start with some of the conversation leading that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to everyone for coming. So this is a loaded question. In mastering the subtleties of cantorial performance, do you have a specific vocal, breath, or appoggio exercise for developing the tone, impeccable legato line, agility for improvisation, your vocal embellishments, melismas, and coloratura? And what, if any, vowel modifications do you use for forward placement and trills? So I find when I'm teaching the trills, I'm really keeping that narrow kind of to get those trills out for the technique. So can somebody speak about it and possibly demonstrate either breath control, agility, legato, or trills?
Oh, everybody's quiet.
That's a real easy question. Sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Cantor.
Yeah, happy to kick us off. Maybe not necessarily to demonstrate, because probably the vocal warm-ups and exercises that I do aren't so different from what most folks are doing who are singing primarily classically. But I will say that, and as so many of my colleagues have said, when you're singing as a cantor in whatever type of synagogue you're in, you're singing a lot of different styles and genres. I know for myself and Cantor Breitzer, those of us in the Reform movement, many in the conservative movement, and lots of people in the Orthodox movement who are mixing it up and trying lots of different new things. You could be within a span of a 1-hour service. We have services that include lots of music, that particularly musical ones might be Friday nights or Saturday morning. You could be singing in a folk style, a pop style, a very classical style. You could be be doing something with tons of runs in coloratura, really high in your register, and then just a few minutes later be singing a really folky piece that you're trying to have everyone in the congregation sing. So you're kind of holding all of these different styles and ways of singing in a very short period of time. At least I find myself doing that often. So in terms of warming myself up, taking care of my voice, it's always really important to me that I'm getting a really full range on my warm-up, that I'm starting really low in my register, making sure I feel comfortable there, but still having the ability and the facility to be in my upper register and to be able to turn out those runs or trills. So I think when you're working with a cantor, or you know, you're hearing a cantor sing, it's important to be really cognizant of the fact that they're probably going to, again, maybe within a span of half an hour or an hour, use a lot of their vocal range, style, and energy.
Sydney, do you generally use traditional major scales, minor scales, or is there, yeah?
Yeah, so Jewish music is written in its own unique modes.
Right, that's why I wondered.
Yeah, there's three kind of main modes that we use, and they all have a different flavor. And then some of our more modern music is also written in a more contemporary major or minor scale. So depending on the time of day or the place in the week you are, there are different modes that are really unique to the synagogue that you might hear. But I know at my synagogue, I might go from chanting something in Hebrew in the correct mode for the service that I'm in, to doing a more contemporary piece that maybe combines Hebrew and English and has more of a folk or contemporary style. So I'd say you really get a mix of those more traditional modes and those more contemporary musical offerings.
And then are they part of your warm-up? Part of why I'm asking is we're trying to get more books out there with vocal exercises, like for pop style singing, that use the pentatonic scale and the blues scale. So I instead of the traditional Western traditional major scale. So I just wondered if that's incorporated into the vocal warm-up, or that just comes within the music itself.
Yeah, I would definitely say I'd be interested to hear what my colleagues say. I don't have any specific warm-ups that I do that specifically incorporate those modes from like a warming up standpoint, but certainly before I do a service or before I'm entering a holiday that uses a certain mode or motif or scale, I really like to play around with that in my voice, in my warm-ups, and really make sure I'm running that through and feeling really comfortable in all the different places I'll be doing it, the different keys. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear what my colleagues have.
Somebody else want to respond?
I can say for myself that part of the question was, how can you sustain for when you have to recite and pray for a few days, such in the high holidays, that it's long days and it's consecutive days, or you know, the whole week or the whole month. Actually, I can speak for myself. It's all about technique. It's a technique that I was been taught since I was 15 until I was 22, and I think that's a big part of it. That you know, some people will comment, some congregants, or some people will comment, "Oh, you left without voice," you know, and that's not the case. If you know how to breathe, if you know how to work with your muscles, with your stomach muscles, with the diaphragm muscles, you shouldn't feel your chords, you know, not at all. So I speak for myself, and I think also that there is a significant difference from morning to evening. When you have to start the service, let's say on a Shabbat, on a Saturday at 9 o'clock or 9:30 a.m., you really have to. I speak only from my own experience. I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, so I will be up and alert, and I do my warm up by 8 o'clock. You know, 7:30 to 8 o'clock, I'm warming myself. And this is, you know, as you growing old, in my case, you know, you gotta, so to speak, you gotta maintain and have good maintenance to the engine. So you can't just get up and start to sing in a full voice. Now, as far as go for the evening, you already warm up. You work during the day. You were talking, you were speaking, you were moving. So the body is warmed up. The sinuses are warmed up. Everything. So if, for example, if I will sing now, it will be much easier for me than I do it in the morning.
Yeah. Thanks,
Ethan, go ahead.
Yeah, no, first of all, I was going to say my favorite mode is entertainment mode. That's the mode I'm always in. It's it tends to go over well, but for me, my warm up is a lot of noise making. As my teacher liked to call it. It's very little singing. It's a lot of vowels, a lot of just connecting the registers. Bringing the top register down into the chest voice and mixing them together and getting that mix really together. And there's a lot of going from that buzzy place back to the warm place in the same breath and same exercise, just to really connect all the registers. So there's a lot of that, and also, as my colleagues all know, I'm sure, but maybe some people here don't. A lot of the misconception is that to sing higher notes, right, that you need more air and more breath. It's in fact the opposite. You need less air to sing more effective high notes, and that's a big part of the warm up in kind of keeping the breath down and getting up to those, warming up the top register with less and less air, and then bringing that down into the chest voice. So it's a really nice mix of just makes it easy for the rest of the day. And then lip flutters are my favorite. Do them all day long on the subway, going to the office, and in the city, lip fluttering all day, all the time.
Great. Go ahead, Joseph.
Oh, well, what do I have to add? I think that it's been said in some measure that the beginning of the day, which Benny was saying, and also Sydney was saying, the beginning of the day, sort of beginning of, she was talking about, sitting in your lower register and testing that out. I think that's a point at which, like, especially the beginning of the day, I don't necessarily do too much warm up. I come into the synagogue sometimes practically cold, and I start to warm up in the Shachrit service. And I know that sounds like, oh, how could he not? But I sort of got traumatized when I was younger, because there was a synagogue that I davened in. It was about 20 years old, and the rabbi came over to me and told me, that was really nice, a very plaintive or sweet davening, but what about power and opera and all that? And he sort of traumatized me a bit, and I went to sleep that next day. I came in and I was practicing, and then I sort of blew out my vocals by the time the prayer service started. So I sort of have to be a little bit, mindful of that and sort of guard myself so that I will not overexert and overdo it. And so I touch the passaggio a little bit here and there in the Shachrit service. I sort of play with it a little bit, and then and also there's a thing that I think there was Yosef Rosenblatt once said. It was the famous cantor who said that a chazzan has to be a baritone and a tenor at sort of at the same time. And I kind of agree with that in a certain measure. I will sort of be a baritone, which is sort of my natural placement for the entire Shachrit service. And then as I start to more and more touch the passaggio, by the time the Musaf service, which will be, let's say 10:30 or something like that, 11, I've already warmed up completely. And then I can touch the high notes and do coloratura runs and start to improvise a bit. And as in terms of actual scales that I warm up with, when I do some little warm up here and there, just to sort of test my voice, I will sometimes take a piece of the prayer service itself. And sometimes when I'm alone, and just sort of like, work with it a bit and play with it and do some sort of vocal runs. And I will do it in, let's say, the Ava Rabba mode, which I think was mentioned in the run up to this, thing. It's basically the Phrygian mode. And then sometimes I'll use the Hijaz from the Sephardic version, which is sort of the counterpart to that. And I might just run down.
Can you demonstrate that, Cantor?
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah.
Because that's one of my questions.
We'll see if
put me on there.
the sound
Yeah,
may
let's
not
see how it sounds.
transmit well, but let's give it a try.
Okay, so let me just play the. That kind of like, just sort of a run down on the. I'll just like, run down the mode, and then I might, doing the hijaz, which is exactly, is sort of like you would hear some of the Sephardic tunes would be sung to that. In the hijaz, it's just one measure, one note off. Just thought I might use that. Just sort of like to run down, and give myself a little bit of the feeling, sort of the flavor of it all, and kind of doing the different things. And then I'm sort of primed to start to play around, and I think that's important, to come in with a little bit of like flexibility with your voice. So that's pretty much my approach, the way I get into it.
Thank you.
And I will say one of the cantors mentioned the tenor and baritone voice. And I just wanted to bring in the fact that a lot of this music was written with the traditionally male voice in mind. However, we know that in the cantorate, there are people of so many diverse genders and so many different diverse voices. And so as voice teachers, when you're looking at some of this music, perhaps you'll be working with someone with a treble voice, and you're looking at a piece that was originally written for a real heavy hitting tenor or baritone. So I think it's something really interesting to consider. It's something we played a lot with when I was in school, what it's like as a higher treble voice. Myself, I'm a higher soprano, to really be able to take these pieces and embody them in my own voice. Women have been ordained cantors for over 50 years now, and of course women have a long history of singing Jewish music, but it is sometimes challenging to kind of look at this music that was originally written for a different type of voice and to bring it into your own space. So if you're a voice teacher who's working with a student who has a treble voice, and they're working on one of these pieces from the golden age of chazanut, these really heavy hitting traditionally male cantors, I think it's both worth exploring, listening to lots of recordings of these traditional cantors doing them, seeing what moments make sense for those heavy hitting moments. And I know we also might talk a little bit about krekhts, which are kind of little like vocal sobs or cracks, which are definitely easier done in a bass or baritone voice or a tenor voice than a treble voice for sure. But I think it's also worth exploring with your student or with the cantor what it's like to be in a treble voice and to be able to maybe make it different from how it would sound. So for myself, when I've been working on those pieces, it's been a huge mix of listening to recordings, trying lots of different things out in terms of the weight of my voice, the timbre of my voice, different things with vibrato to see how much I can imitate and embody some of those voices for how the pieces were written, but then also remembering that my voice is different, my cantorate is different, and not being afraid to take some ownership of it as well and bring it to my own voice, make it suit me. So I think that's really important when you're working with cantors, is to see, okay, who was this piece written for, who wrote this piece, who sang this piece, and how can we make it work. I do see a couple of questions in the chat. I'm not sure if everyone else on the panel is seeing these questions, so I can read them aloud and give them a quick answer, but then of course if anyone else wants to jump in, but just because I see them, someone asked, when are these three modes used the most? That could be a whole class within itself, could be like 3 years worth of classes. But there's different modes that are used at different times in the week for different services: morning, evening, different holidays, Shabbat, weekday services. So these different modes are brought in at different times to distinguish different moments in the Jewish calendar. And again, everyone, please feel free to add on from this. And the next person who wrote, I'm a music student writing a paper for class on congregational versus cantorial singing. Can anyone speak specifically to vocal behaviors and interactions from the congregation vis-a-vis the chazzan? Are there any good sources out there on this topic? Thank you. Anyone want to take that one?
I don't know about the sources, but I can tell you just some differences, right? You don't always get to sing in the key that you want when you're doing more congregational singing. So, it's just part of life. that not everybody sings the same way as the the cantor, and everyone's in different ranges and different registers, and so in order to try to accommodate everybody and to try to get everybody singing, sometimes you need to compromise on the keys that you choose in those congregational pieces. So going back to the whole, we're chameleons, sometimes we're tenors, sometimes we're baritone, sometimes we're treble, sometimes we're not. It's sort of that whole setup and understanding that we're going to need to use all the registers of our voice, unless we're doing just no congregational singing, but I assume everybody these days is doing some sort of congregational singing. So you're really going to need to use all registers of the voice, which goes back to making sure you're warmed up properly and all that. So definitely congregational singing requires some compromise on the part of the cantor, and understanding that we'll have to not always be the most comfortable when leading those pieces.
I would just like to add on what Cantor Leifer said, that it's very important that as a cantor, you will be the one that, so to speak, rides this wagon. In other words, you are in the driver's seat, and so when you make up in your mind what will be the key that you're gonna sing this congregational tune, you have to be very firm on that, because if you starting and you hesitate about what is the key, then as Cantor Leifer says, it's gonna go all over, and instead of having a congregational singing, it will sound like a horrible experience. And so, and by the way, the same thing sometimes when you are invited as a cantor to a congregation that deliberately they want to hear a cantorial concert. During the services, they want to hear all the famous traditional pieces. You might start a piece, a very famous piece, and all of a sudden you will see that you have a competition with somebody from the audience, and this is, seriously, you have to be very focused, because otherwise he can throw you off. You can start, for example, and then you have to take some air, and before you even continue, all of a sudden you hear somebody, hey, wait a second, give me to breathe, let me perform. And you got to be very, very focused on what you do, because otherwise he can throw you off key. He can destroy all your performance, and then it will say, no, how was the cantor? He was okay. His voice was okay, but he's not so musical, and it's not your fault. So that's my experience. Got to be very, very careful, and always reminding everyone, not in an arrogant way, God forbid, but in a way that everybody knows you are the driver. You're in the driver's seat. You're the one that drives this car, bus, or whatever you want to call it.
Sharon, I'm aware of the time at 20 to the hour, and we're at question 1. Somebody in the...
You know what, I think we slipped through to question 4.
Let's, I do want to just address, because somebody asked it in the question box, and it was your second question. Ali says, was there a name for the sob sound you mentioned? And that is part of your second question, is it not, Sharon?
Yes. So that's the krekhts in the voice. Very difficult to say, very difficult to write. It's that sobbing feeling. Can anybody describe how they use it, where they use it, and what is the technique? Is it just a lift of the palate, tilting forward? What are you doing for that?
I don't know about anyone else, but I just go back to my 13, 14-year-old self when my voice was changing. and it would happen whether I'd wanted to or not. But I always, for myself, I always associate it, with a moment of a very personal, individual relationship between the cantor and the text. that there is some emotion being conveyed. I think the surface level is sort of a cry, right, and sort of a sub, right? But it could also be out of joy. So I think maybe a nice example of that, using a melody with which most people, I dare say, are familiar. You know, the most famous Jewish tune of all, some say, Hava Nagila. Hava Nagila, Hava Nagila, Hava Nagila, v'nismecha. It's about let us be happy, let us rejoice. I can do the krekhts, but there it's like, this is me excited about the fact that I'm singing about rejoicing and being happy. And so I access that, you know, that break, that spot in my voice that's right between the different registers, and I use it. I harness it as almost as if it were a superpower, which I don't know if you could say in other styles of vocal music, but it is a quintessential element of Ashkenazic cantorial art for sure.
Thank you. Josh, let me ask you, do most cantors continue to study with a teacher, to make sure they have somebody else's ears on their instrument?
Many cantors I know study regularly with a teacher. My wife, who's a voice teacher, would dearly love for me to be one of them. For myself, it's been a while, but I definitely underscore the importance of regular vocal health and study, as has been mentioned earlier.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sharon. Do you want to move us to?
Yes. So, so recently I read in {𝗖ście 𝗀𝘁𝘀𝘁], which is the Journal of the American Society for Jewish Music. I read an article by Don Bergman, who spoke about the golden age of cantorial music. And he said, during the Middle Ages, the chazzan was a representative of the congregation who displayed musical prose to enhance the prayers. However, during the 17th century, there was a pivotal shift where cantorial singing was elevated into an art form. So I have, excuse me, I have 3 examples from the golden age of cantorial music, which took place in the late 19th century to the 20th centuries, both in Europe and the United States. There's many cantors, okay? I have 3 legendary cantors, Israel Shore, Yosef Rosenblatt, and Gershon Sorota, who also sang opera. So I'm going to try to share my screen, Kari, and see if we can get a little bit here. This is Israel Shore singing 𝗖ście Beit HaMikdash, a prayer of redemption. And I believe that this performance really exemplifies cantorial artistry. You're going to hear the runs, the krekhts, everything, all that jazz. Okay, next is Yosef Rosenblatt singing Hineni, a prayer for the holidays, expressing personal responsibility. He was one of the most famous cantors, and his voice appears in the Al Jolson movie, The Jazz Singer. He did not want to appear in the movie, but he did allow his voice to be heard. And last is 𝗚𝘂𝗲 singing an aria from 𝗚𝘂𝗲𝘀𝘁𝘀 di quella pira. 𝗚𝘂𝗲 was one of the leading cantors of Europe and was sometimes referred to as the Jewish Caruso. During his concert tours, he performed to a sold-out crowd at Carnegie Hall. Here is di quella pira. Okay, so can somebody explain what the great age of cantorial music was, and the recordings and the concerts?
All right.
I mean, it brought. Go ahead, Ben. No, I just said obviously it brought our synagogue traditional music out to the masses. All the recordings, and you were starting to see cantorial concerts and recordings and all these things that were now our sacred work and what we do, and these beautiful pieces and voices were now being brought out to everyone. Before that, it was really, you had to be in their shul or in their synagogue to hear them. And then this age came with recordings, and it really was enabled cantorial music to spread around, like I said, to the masses, to people who were unfamiliar, people never heard it before. And I think it brought a new appreciation to what cantors do.
So the golden age, what happened with the golden age is all of a sudden Jewish people, especially the Eastern European Jews, all of a sudden it was like a position, it was like a job that Jewish parents took pride if their son, at that time it was just males cantors, if their son took a like to be a cantor. So it was something that you would encourage your child to do, and you were like a celebrity. And with that, all of a sudden it came out, as Cantor Leifer said, it came out of the synagogue, and all of a sudden we found that we have a tremendous talent among Jewish people, and they made masterpieces that wasn't shy from any other opera. In fact, in the Sephardic world, you can see that the chazanim in the Sephardic community, they adopt their local music. The same thing went in Eastern Europe. They adopt their music to what was opera in these days. So all of a sudden, Jews took pride of, oh, we have our own opera too. And there is some beautiful masterpieces, and this was the golden age, because all of a sudden you have composers like Shorer, like 𝗖cie ◀𝗀 that lived in Atlantic Beach 110 years ago, and they were brilliant musicians, and they made beautiful pieces. In fact, there is some of the pieces that Yosef Rosenblatt had recorded, and they are some of them you can really detect a motif of opera in them. if it's 𝗚𝘂𝗲𝗀𝗁𝗲 or Adena Azaranu Achamecha, there is pieces there. In this piece, there is a scale that comes from, it sounds like also in some part of La Bohème, when he does, Ki so it's it sounds like opera, and when somebody closes his eyes and said, wow, this is opera, but in what language it is. So that's what made the golden age, that all of a sudden Jews, and doesn't matter if they were less or more observant, they were very proud to say, hey, we have our own music, and it doesn't less than what the majority of the population hears. And that's why also there is a lot of non-observant Jews that as a kid, I remember they used to listen to cantorial music, you know. And I, as a kid that was raised up in an Orthodox house, I remember one of my neighbors, I asked them, how come you listen to sacred texts, but you never come to shul? So he left. So that was his answer.
So Kari, I have examples of more contemporary cantorial music. Shall I share them?
Yes, and let me ask Sydney or Josh. There was a question that came in about nasalents in the singing as a cantor. Would one of you like to address that, paraphrase it, and address it? Josh, do you want to, or I could? Do you have your eyes on the question?
I do, yes. Yeah, the question had to do with masterful cantorial singers seemingly singing through their noses when accessing high notes, and different people are cited, Ben-Zion Miller, 𝗖ście 𝗛𝗀𝗀𝘀𝘀. I'm actually really eager to hear from some of my colleagues who trained in sort of that classic master-apprentice model as to sort of the origins of that. But my assumption had been that, you know, it was a tried and true means of making sure that you're able to fill the space in a time that, you know, would predate amplification. But maybe I'm misinformed. I don't know, Yosef, Ethan, Benjamin, if that's your understanding as well.
Well, I thought there was modification of the vowel, but not necessarily nasal. I mean, do you brighten your vowels as you're going up the tessitura?
No, I think it's but I think it's just more buzzy. It's more forward of a sound as opposed to being more in a warm, you know, place.
Okay.
I think it's just what it comes across. And I think the more of the old school cantors, I think they were trained by cantors to sing that specific type of music, and I don't think they were necessarily trained to sing in other ways, in other modes. And you know, I think a lot can be said for also contemporary classical singers. I think if you know you asked Pavarotti to sing something from Les Mis, it would still sound probably something like opera, right? It wouldn't sound necessarily. So I think some of the old school, they were trained in one singular quality versus, you know, maybe more modern. You know, I could say I was trained more, I guess, overall healthy singing technique, right? That can kind of go back and forth from a variety of styles and still be in a healthy place. And, you know, I can sing something classical, I could sing Elvis and still be healthy and have it not sound out of place. So I think that it's just how they were taught. It's not a knock on them or anyway. I think they just had their one thing and they mastered it, and that's what they wanted to do. I don't think they had any interest in singing anything else. So that's.
Can I add something? I just wanted to add that I think also it's a certain non-specificity to the vocalism of cantorial art, is that you have a long text to get through. And so your brain thinks very much in terms of volume. I remember Cantor Malavani, when I studied the Bell School at Yeshiva University, he was saying that sometimes we don't have to make an operatic piece out of everything. You know, we have to just chant. We have basically, sometimes you just gotta roll up your shirt sleeves and just get the job done. And I think that that sort of carries over. There's a certain excellence about singing an aria and doing it perfectly and not doing it nasally and all that kind of stuff. But when you're just doing the volume of cantorial music, just coming into shul, and you have such a large service, you're basically doing thousands and thousands and thousands of notes. You're not really thinking about, oh, I have to get this perfect encapsulation. You're thinking, I got to get the job done. Then you go and transfer over to an operatic piece, and you don't necessarily always come with that same sort of, you know, mindset as an opera singer who's like, wow, they would throw me out of, you know, if I sang La Traviata or something wrong. I was reading some book, I think it was Jerome Hines, he was talking about, you know, a certain perfection in the Italian opera. We just, in a certain sense, don't have that at certain times. And I'm always amazed when I hear a cantor who's actually singing operatically and not making those types of mistakes because of, again, the volume and the transfer over. You have to remind yourself that, hey, this is more of a recording artist type of thing that I have to do at this moment, and I actually have to deliver the goods, and I can't just, you know, slough through thousands and thousands of notes at this point. And I think do maybe some of these cantors a service to just sit down for a minute beforehand, or maybe with a teacher, and just, you know, review principles before they attempt an operatic piece or an aria.
There's a question in the box that I think kind of connects to some of this. Someone asked if there are certain techniques or traditions with vibrato, and I would say it connects to what my colleagues just said, and the fact that, like, yes, it's the mark of like good, healthy legato singing, right? There's also some Jewish music that comes from times, for example, if you look up like Salomone Rossi, he was in, you know, a more Baroque and medieval style, writing in 8 parts for 8 voices. So in that style, you wouldn't use vibrato, right? Just like you wouldn't use vibrato for like Charpentier or certain handle things, right? Or Monteverdi. So some of it lines up, I think, time period wise. If you're looking at Rossi, again, you're singing more like Monteverdi, Charpentier. And if you're looking at the golden age of cantors, you're singing more like Puccini opera. And then you come to the more contemporary things, which might be even closer to like a pop song, and you kind of have to make your own good decisions about how to use vibrato there. But I, again, think like a normal, healthy amount of vibrato can for a lot of voices just be, you know, good legato singing. And so I haven't really encountered any cantorial music that has pushed me to use so much vibrato or take away so much vibrato that it becomes unnatural for my voice, with the exception of singing Rossi, in which case you really want to go for a much purer and straighter tone to suit the style.
Sharon, did you have a couple short samples?
Yeah, you know, I think I'm just going to jump to the screen with the contemporary. See if I can find that. I have to go back. Nope, whoops. So this is, I'll do 2. Well, this is Cantor Breitzer singing the Chadodi, a liturgical hymn welcoming the Sabbath. And then I think I'll go to Unetana Tokef. I'll jump to that. Oh, which is next. This is an awesome solemn prayer of judgment during the High Holy Days. And this is Cantor Michaeli. Known as Sydney. And if I could just do one more, Debbie Friedman
Absolutely.
was very important in the contemporary world, and this is her Misha Berach. I would just like to do a little bit of that. A prayer for healing.
May the source of strength bless the one before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
It's wonderful, Sharon. I'm so glad for you to share those other samples as well. It gives us there's really a broad continuum of sound as a cantor that you've all mentioned, and to hear it is really profound. So thank you for that.
I just wanted to say something, so I know we're going to be wrapping up soon. And I'm speaking for myself, but I'm sure all of my colleagues, if there's anyone who has questions further, or especially if you have any interest in coming to this path of the cantorate, of being a cantor, I know we would all be excited to be resources to you, to talk to you, depending on what sort of movement you're interested in learning from. I'm sure any of us would be happy to be a resource, and I'm sure our information could be passed along if anyone was interested in that.
Thank you for that, Sydney. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate all of your time tonight. My goodness, there's so much to cover, but we covered some history, which I really appreciated, and some vocal pedagogy and specificity about the style. So you really peppered a lot in our time together, and I greatly appreciate your time. Josh or anyone have any final parting words for the NATS, the National Association of Teachers of Singing community, those of us who will be working with the singers?
Well, I think as you've heard in lots of different ways from almost everyone here, versatility is really the name of the game. I've worked with lots of different kinds of singers over the course of my career. I started singing in choirs and high school musical theater and operetta, and then I trained in opera as well. And in no other time in my singing life have I been called upon to sing with as versatile an array of techniques as I have been since I became a cantor. And so I encourage anyone who's interested to get to know the repertoire more, to get to know cantors better. Would love to be able to share more about it.
I love that.
I just want to thank everybody for all the work that you do. Voice teaching is a very important work, and often goes underappreciated. So it is certainly appreciated by all of us here on the panel, and everybody who goes out to listen to any performance anywhere doesn't necessarily know that it's all of you who are behind the wonderful things that they're hearing, but you are. So thank you for being behind the scenes and producing some amazing singing around the world.
Well, what a lovely note to end on tonight. Sharon, I can't thank you enough for bringing this topic to me. I'm really thrilled to highlight this discussion tonight. So thank you for reaching out.
Thank you, Harriet. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your time. And I really appreciate tonight's chat.
So please join us for the next NATS chat, December 7th, with Dr. Lucian 𝗖ście. Many of you know him as one of the renowned laryngologists in New York City. And we're going to be discussing the care of performing voice, less art, more science. So please join us in December. And for everyone else, have a good rest of your evening. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.